Hello, everybody. Welcome in this webinar on the heat transfer label. For those who joined early, thank you for your patience. It's 4 o'clock, so I suggest we kick off immediately with the presentation. So for those who don't know me, my name is Hans Verbergbus. I'm application manager in Flint Group, and my today webinar will go about heat transfer labels. As you are aware, XEIKON has a wide range of applications that we cover. I'm not going through all of them. At this moment, we will focus mainly only on the heat transfer labels, of which we are more than 25 years involved and have experience with. So 25 years ago, there only were 2 customers, to my understanding, that I visited actually, and that were doing heat transfer. One was in the UK, and it was a silk screen printer who converted into digital. They did all their homework themselves. They know how to. They figured out how to transfer the toner on the different applications. And the second customer I visited was somebody in Switzerland, and he was doing a little bit more strange application. He was transferring on DVDs and CDs, and the big challenge for him was adding variable data onto the CDs at that moment of time. A quite unique possibility compared to a silk screen that they were usually doing. So 25 years later, you see a lot more people are doing heat transfer labels. Most likely they were doing it, but we were not aware of it. But now we have all over the world XEIKON customers doing heat transfer for a wide variety of applications, and we'll dig a little bit more closer now too. So the agenda of today is first go a little bit for those who are not familiar through the heat transfer process. Then also quite important is the different types of heat transfer, or how we as XEIKON Flint Group see the different types of heat transfer. Then of course the value of digital printing. Why should you go to digital printing versus silk screen or classical gravure heat transfer labels? The preferred digital press. Very important, where I really want to dive in a little bit deeper, is the X800, the brain as I like to call it. Because if you go digital, the workflow is as important as the printing process itself. And then last but not least, of course, a little bit the lessons learned. So I'll start with the heat transfer process itself. So when we talk about a heat transfer label, we talk about a label design that is transferred from a carrier. So it is a printed image that is printed on a transport board or paper. And by heat and pressure, and depending on the application, also an adhesive, you transfer it onto any 3D shape that is around. Perhaps I'm exaggerating, but any 3D shape, but with any object you would like to transfer it on. So to make a comparison now with a self-adhesive label versus a heat transfer label, is that, for example, with a normal label, you print on your face stock, you print a marker, so your system knows how to convert it, and you remove the face stock, and you end up with your label onto a liner. And that label will be applied onto an object. When we talk about a heat transfer label, we don't have a face stock. We will print immediately on the liner, meaning mostly a silicone coating. It must be a release layer. We print the image, and here you see the second difference. It's the reverse. So you always will print your image reverse, because after transfer, your image must be readable. And then last but not least, we also add a marker, because a lot of the applicators used in heat transfer need to be triggered, and they need to know, hey, when do I apply the label onto the object? So we add a marker onto it. Another difference with a normal label and a heat transfer label is that when I do a tape test, with your normal label, you don't want the toner to be removed. But when a heat transfer label, all your toner should be removed and stick on your table. And this is a way of validating to know, hey, will my toner or ink release onto the object? So this is a little bit the difference between the regular self-adhesive labels and a heat transfer label. So now a little bit more deeper into the transfer process itself. So I have my labels, as I showed you, printed on a foil or on a paper. and I will put them on an applicator. These applicators can be or fully automated, or it can be manual. There's a wide range of applicators available, sold by multiple partners, and it ends up on the decorated product. This is a little bit in a short shell. So these are the three major steps that are involved in the heat transfer process. Is the printing, it's the applying, and the decorating, and then your final product. So heat and pressure will define the transfer from the toner on your substrate, on your object. So what are a little bit the advantages of heat transfer labels? One of the biggest advantages is that your label becomes an integral part of the object. So you cannot peel it off. There is no way you can remove the face stock. So it really gives you a true no label look. You can decorate it 360 degrees on whatever object that you have. It can be recycled with the container, so you don't have a separation step. Let's say you have a polypropylene bottle, but you have a paper label on there, so you don't have that issue. And it's also quite sustainable because you lose much less substrate as, for example, with a pressure-sensitive label or an IML label, as you only transfer the printed image. And also very durable. Some of these products have high requirements, so durability that stands up on the shelf. Now, where do you use those kind of labels? Food containers, paint containers, household chemicals, personal care products, promotional products like drinkware, pen, soap, but I'll show more examples later. So you would be surprised on how many products a heat transfer label is applied. Even in Europe, those Heinz ketchup bottles, those are, for example, also heat transfer labels. So it's quite interesting in how many applications it's used. So I mentioned earlier that there are different types of heat transfer we like to use in our segment in XEIKON. So the first one is the industrial heat transfer, like for paint buckles, as I mentioned, chemical bottles, those things. So products are mostly very consumer goods. You also have the 360 decoration that is lots of time required. Again, this is no problem for the XEIKON machine because we have a full rotary printer, so the label length for us is not a problem. So if you have a 20 liter or a 5-gallon pail, it's not an issue. High quality, of course. The cost must be rather low because you talk about high volumes and your end product doesn't really have a very high value. And of course, also again, as I already mentioned earlier, there is a true no label look required on your product. And good mechanical and resistance required, especially for the heavier products like paint, pails, and other things. So as an alternative for digital can be an alternative, for example, for direct product printing, whether it's inkjet or dry offset, pressure sensitive labels, in-mold labeling, silic screening, and the conventional heat transfer labels, which are currently printed via rotogravure or flexo presses, but of course only which is only done for high volumes. So if you're going into short run, digital is going to be a very big benefit versus the options I'm showing you here. The next type of heat transfer is the promotional heat transfer. Same principle always, heat and pressure, sometimes an adhesive, but of course the products are completely different. Here the products are promotional articles, so a high quality is required, but there's also a higher value in the product. So sometimes we only need about 5 of those, let me see, those cooling buckets. So very short run, but the products are at a very high value. Also, again here, good mechanical resistance because like some products, you don't want to have them wasted for 2 weeks. They need to be used for years. So good mechanical resistance is required. And also here, a true no label look. In the promotional business, what are we an alternative for? Sublimation, direct printing inkjet, pressure sensitive labels, silic screening, a lot used, also pad printing, hot foil stamping, and self-adhesive labels. So these are a little bit the alternatives that we can bring or be an alternative for these ways of applicating. Now, the third part of my presentation, a bit the value of digital printing, or why should you go for digital printing? It's of course the high production capacity that you have versus silk screening of tampon printing. Short run jobs, trial mock-ups with short lead times, it is totally no problem. I remember somebody saying that he runs within half an hour a full day production that he used to run on the silk screen equipment. So you really have a capacity increase. Again, the high print quality, if you would compare it with silk screen or tampon printing, which is much used for those durable promotional products. There are no solvents involved, so it's a dry printing process. There are no odors, and every label can be made unique. I already mentioned, and I'll talk in later, but you can make every label unique, especially for the high volume products. It could be used for brand protection, anti-counterfeiting, and traceability. Now, I've been talking about the printing. Now, which printing press should you use if you would go to digital? Now, as you know, XEIKON Flint Group has a wide range of presses. Not all of them are suited for heat transfer. So we will be focusing more on the dry toner presses, and to be more specific, on the XEIKON Cheetahs CX30, CX300, or the CX50, CX500. These are the presses which would best suit your needs if you want to go into heat transfer labels. Some info on it. So we have 5 printing stations. It can be CMYK and white. White is rather important in the heat transfer because a lot of times you will be transferring onto colored objects. And then our white opacity is very important. We have one of the best opacities in digital printing. So our white is really key here. But if you would like to use other colors, let's say CMYK or orange, we also have off-the-shelf colors available. I mentioned again 1200 dpi, a very high uptime. Our X800 digital front end, high opaque white, I mentioned already earlier. And then, of course, depending on your needs, you can start with the CX30, which runs 20 meters per minute and a width of 330 millimeters. Or you can go full throttle, 30 meters with the CX500 and 508 millimeter imaging width. So it depends a little bit on the volumes that you require, that you can make a choice on the needed engine. The toner, of course, also very important. It's in-house developed and produced in Belgium. We have a very high light fastnesses, of course, very important for those promotional products, but also for the pails, especially when you paint pails, very important. We have CMYK and white, as I mentioned, but also off-the-shelf colors, if you want to do a color gamut extension, and highest food compliancy. We do have customers who do transfer on pails for food, and also here we have a very good solution for that. Other benefits are, perhaps I'm saying it too much, but our true 1200 dpi, we don't have any dot gain. So what you make in your prepress is what you can print. Of course, we can simulate dot gain if you would like to do that. Very fine line, micro text up to 1 point, which makes it also feasible. We have customers using our technology for security printings, and already mentioned spot colors, which are very easy to swap in the production process. So this is a little bit more on detail on the presses that we can offer with the solution. And now a little bit more my favorite. As I mentioned, our first customers, they didn't have any issues with figuring out how the heat transfer worked. What they did have issues was, hey, how do we make the prepress? How do we do this variable data? How do we optimize this process? And this is where the brain, the X800 comes in. So when we talk about the X800, it means it's our workflow, and it's also the operating software for the engine. So for those who are not familiar with the XEIKON press, you always have 2 screens. One is the engine control, and one is the workflow. The engine control is really the interface of the press, where the operator can fine-tune, he can make his own workspace, depending on the screens he likes the most. And then we have the workflow where you can or fully manual rip or have a complete fully automated workflow involving color management, in positioning, adding variable data, and all those things. And at the end of the job, get a full report on how long it took, the toner that was used. So this is what we talk about the workflow. And this is on the workflow, I would like to dig a little bit more deeper. Because a workflow is really important because there is not one workflow for every application that goes around. So you really need to make sure that if you make a choice on the application, that your workflow can follow the printing process. So that's why certain features must be able or must be available in that workflow. And of course, the workflow must be suited to be integrated in the current process that the customer is using. And preferably also simple actions repeating or simple repeating for complex actions. And this is where I'm going to take out some actions, not too many, because otherwise I would be sitting here for hours. But I've chosen one of my favorites. The first one is to save a lot of time in pre-press is, let's say you are a web-to-print printer, so you get a lot of files in, and we have this tool called Color Magic. So let's say you receive an image, it's a JPEG, 300 dpi, so it's good suited for printing, but it's an RGB file. So our system will convert it to CMYK, but still then you don't have your white layer. And yes, you could send it to the pre-press department, but in an automated workflow, I don't think you want to do that. So we have a Color Magic feature where you can say, hey, if you get a file like this and you see white text, please put white toner on it there. Another option that you can be, hey, please put white toner all visible toners, but skip the white text. Or you can say, no, I want to have white toner all over the artwork. And this without going into any prepress or bothering any prepress guy. So this can save you a lot of time, especially if you're into web to print. Another challenge that people have if they go into digital, because you're going to shorten, is that you need to optimize your web. So also here, XEIKON has a range of solutions. First of all, we have Job Optimizer, where you say, look, I have one size, but I have many different versions. You can use Optimizer to best lay out the jobs on your printing web. But even more neat is the VaryLane, where you can combine different shapes, different jobs, and different file lengths all on the web. And this mainly because we have this full rotary benefit, and you can really optimize the web best to your needs and combine all these short runs into one job. So very important, Job Optimizer and VaryLane. Then last but not least, variable data. I already mentioned at the beginning, everybody wants to do variable data, and by now we know we can do variable text barcodes, and you can do it without any third-party authoring tool. So on the RIP, you can do it with limited time required. But we now also have VaryOne, which can make every label really unique by just changing images. And I hope the image is quite visible, but here we have 20,000 unique label designs, so the butterfly changes. And it took only 60 seconds to make those designs. And most likely you now are not believing me, but I suggest you come over to XEIKON where we can show it live. We also have some nice webinars on that, but we made 20,000 unique label designs only in 60 seconds. So again, a very important add-on for your workflow. So this is why I wanted to dig in a little bit more deeper in that part. So main key takeaways for me are, and I hope for you the same. A heat transfer is a label that is transferred. So you don't stuck it with glue, but you put it onto your object by heat and pressure. You got 4 building blocks. It's your printed image, it's your carrier, it's your transfer process, and your object. If you have these 4 under control, you're good to go. We at XEIKON, we see 2 families, in the industrial or the promotional, but we have solutions for both of them. XEIKON advantages versus other technologies, our 3D API, our high production capacity, especially in the workflow, so you can really run short-run labels, trials, mock-ups, and really deliver it in a short time. Dry printing process, so there are no longer any odors around. It's a full rotary process, so if you want to print a file of 2 meters long, not a problem. And the XEIKON Cheetah presses are the preferred presses to do this process. As I mentioned, XEIKON has a wide range of presses, but for these applications, it's best to go for the Cheetah range. And if you would like to have more info, I suggest you don't wait too long and you visit us at Loop Americas at the XEIKON booth, Flint Group booth, where our colleagues will gladly help you out. I hope you enjoyed the seminar, and you would have additional questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much.